Hi, this is Perry Marshall, author of 80/20 Sales and Marketing, and today's show is a definitive conversation about making more and working less and being a better leader with 80/20.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. Magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados with leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing that changes everything in your life and in your business. To find out more about us, you can go to FullMontyLeadership.com. So let me ask you, in what ways do you need to up-level your leadership? Well, have you considered the 80/20 rule and how that might change the way you do leadership? You've probably heard of it, but are you using it? Now remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes on our Facebook and LinkedIn groups. Simply look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you tune into podcasts. We always need your help in staying relevant, so please get over there to wherever it is you tune in, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Florida to Washington, D.C. to California and Colorado. You can also catch us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can listen to us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in, because along with our outstanding guest today, I have a dear friend with us who is going to be co-hosting with me today. My co-host on this particular episode is Mr. Joel Bauer. Joel is the master of mindset for an amazing seller e-commerce training company that has helped others build $1 million brands from scratch. He's also the founder of Don't Die of Dumb. No, please don't. That shows people how to own your health and get ready for the massive advancements in medical science. Now, whether you are a CEO, someone in the C-suite, or a sales leader, or leader, entrepreneur, whatever capacity, you've no doubt heard of the 80/20 rule. But do you know what it means in the context of getting your message, your philosophy, your purpose, and your brand out there? And have you considered what it actually means in the context of being a leader? Really? Think about it. Well, stay tuned, because our guest on this episode is Mr. Perry Marshall, a superstar in and of himself. His reinvention of Pareto's principle, which is the 80/20 rule, is published in Harvard Business Review, and NASA's Jet Propulsion Labs uses his 80/20 curve as a productivity tool. Perry Marshall is endorsed in Forbes and Inc. Magazine as one of the most expensive business consultants in the world. So scratch the pennies together. He wrote the world's best-selling book on digital advertising, Ultimate Guide to Google AdWords, and has consulted in over 300 industries. He has a degree in electrical engineering, and he is a lad who, like myself and my co-host, loves a good old deep dive into the questions of life, science, evolution, and leadership. In fact, his Evolution 2.0 challenge, announced at the Royal Society in London, is the world's largest science research prize. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome author of many books, including Evolution 2.0, Mr. Perry Marshall!
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, and Joel, great to have you here too. And this is an incredibly powerful topic. when I first realized what 80-20 really was. Now, I knew what it was before. Like, I knew what everybody knows. I knew that 20% of the people have 80% of the money. I knew that. But I didn't, when I realized, like, oh, what this really is, I literally jumped up from a coffee shop and I got in my car and I went home and I started pulling all these papers and had my calculator. I was like laying on the floor and I was like, oh my word, this is everywhere, and it will completely change the way you see the world. It'll change the way you read a spreadsheet. It'll change what you see when you look out the window. I can look out my window and there's a tree out there, but when I realized that not only does 20% of the branches carry 80% of the sap, 20% of the 20% carry 80% of the 80%. It's actually this infinitely deep thing. There's this infinity folded into the finite world, and it will absolutely change the way you lead an organization. It'll change the way that you debug problems in a business. It will change the way you allocate employees. It'll change the way you see customers. So there's a lot of good stuff today. Thank you.
Well, I mean, that's all very intriguing, and I want to stay with that because in many ways, when you and I discussed it before, it's kind of a Mandelbrot set idea,
yes,
right? Rather than just the 80-20, 80% of your business comes from 20% of your people. It's a Mandelbrot set of a quantum infinity propulsion down this rabbit hole. So I want to come back to that, but let's start where we love to start in this show, which is to ask you as a leader, because we live in this world of influencers and leaders, and we're always bombarded with all these famous people and who we should listen to and all the rest of it. But my favorite question to ask people is, who is somebody who's had massive influence on your life that we likely wouldn't know or wouldn't maybe even suspect? Somebody who's had really been that leverage point in the way that you look at yourself, your life, your philosophy, and of course your leadership.
Well, a huge influence is Richard Koch. I was reading his book when I had that epiphany, and he is one of the most underrated business authors. Now, a lot of my customers know who he is because I talk about him a lot, but like I think he's right up there with people like Peter Drucker or Al Ries or Jack Trout, really big thinkers. And Richard insists that there's really only about 3 things that you need to understand in business. You need to understand the 80-20 principle in a deep way. You need to understand the STAR principle, and you need to understand the notion of simplification. And that really all great businesses do those 3 things. And what I like about it is it makes it a lot simpler than, hey, why don't you just read these 112 business books, and then, while you're in the middle of that, we're going to be winging more lists of business. Oh, this really good one just came out, and oh, have you heard about this, and have you heard about that? Business doesn't have to run that way. I don't think that's how you think about business. That's not how you think about leadership. So I've got many influences, but for this conversation, he would be the number 1.
So is there a particular book by him that you would recommend?
The STAR Principle. And
okay.
the STAR Principle is, it comes from something that Boston Consulting Group came up with probably about 50 years ago, which is the 1% of the companies that make 50% of the money are the ones that are number 1 in a growing market. And what that book teaches you how to do is find an unaddressed segment of a market where you can be the leader the very first day that you go into the market.
Very cool.
And that idea is fractal too. It's not only true of like British Petroleum, Walmart, Amazon. It's also true of like one Google ad on one search term over in the corner of some tiny little market that nobody pays attention to. And I love it when things are true in the micro scale and true in the macro scale, because then you can start to see them everywhere.
Yeah, that's one of the things you and I had talked a lot about, was this idea of in our previous conversation on Curiosity Bites on my other show, was this idea of what is true, small t true versus large t true. And that this, that one of the things you and I spend our life doing is looking for the large T truth inside of all the small t truths. Now, this is a show about leadership, and leadership has many pieces to it. And one of the pieces of it is courage. And I know that Joel has a great question here because we had talked about this, because he's been observing you for a while. Yeah. He's been out there with the hook waiting to pull you in.
Very, very lucky to run into you when I was getting into AdWords. Much better place to start than a lot of the stuff out there. But I was always curious about like the kind of the transitions as you went through, and even it's like the newest one, the Evolution 2.0. And I talked to so many thought leaders, and there's this resistance to really making that next step. But we have to have that vision as leaders in our like where we're going and what's going to happen. And I'm curious about like as you made those transitions, how did you kind of deal with the maybe some of the resistance in your audience or your peer groups, and make it still true to you, to where you wanted to go and where you needed to go?
Well, let me tell you, just like top of the stack.
Yeah.
One of the transitions that I had to make, and this was almost 20 years ago. So the name that I was born with was Perry Sink, S-I-N-K. And Sink is a very common name in certain parts of North Carolina. And nobody's ever heard it anywhere else. And when I was growing up, I thought, whose idea was it to have this kind of a dorky name? Like, who would ever want that name? And in 2002, I think it was, I went to court and I did a legal name change, and I stood in front of this judge, and he goes, "Mr. Sink, why do you want to change your name?" And I said, "Your Honor, because it's better to be a sheriff than a kitchen appliance." And Marshall was my mother's maiden name. So I had a whole, I had a whole side of the family that used the name Marshall. I thought that's like a way better name. Now, that was like a necessary thing. In fact, the thing that pushed me over the edge was when my son was born. I had a daughter. It was like, she's not stuck with this name, but he is. I would never do that to him. But I had to overcome all of this internal resistance. It was like, so do you get to do that? Like, you're born and the people that love you give you a name and identity. Like, is it okay to change that? And it was like, I thought about it for a while. Yes, like I need to be who I want to be. And in fact, it was a huge mental shift, because like, I actually like my name now. It actually sounds good. It rolls off the tongue. In fact, I am quite sure if I'd kept the old name, nobody would know who I am. Nobody would think that a guy named Perry Sink is a best-selling author. It's like if you know somebody and they have a weird name, you get used to it, but the rest of the world never does, right? And so,
what are you saying about me, Perry?
Well, I think you're a very powerful official in an ancient kingdom somewhere. That's what I think. That's what I think you are.
Okay.
Or maybe you're like a very nice bird. I mean, I guess you get to decide.
There's no E, buddy. There's no E. I am not a dove.
Well, no. The reason I feel like this is a good way to answer your question, Joel, is that I don't care what you do, if logically, like, if I went and I changed my name, or if I made this investment in this stock that I'm certainly is going to go up, or if I get involved in this trend and I'm almost guaranteed to be successful at that. Some part of you, like maybe the demon on your left shoulder, if you want to say it that way, is going to try to stop you. Okay. And I call it resistance. There's a great book called The War of Art that talks all about this, that in fact, this is one of the ways that that you're heading in the right direction, is you start to recognize, oh, that resistance demon is kicking in. This must be a good idea. And in fact, every great forward motion I've ever had, I have found myself fighting that resistance demon on the left shoulder. And so transitioning from industrial sales into online marketing consulting, and transitioning from the first version of that to then doing Google AdWords, and then from there to the 80-20 stuff, doing the evolution 2.0 stuff. Every one of those steps, there was this, it's like I had to overcome myself.
Yeah.
And I learned to turn it into a positive, like, oh, there's that guy again. Well, then we're definitely doing this. That is how I've switched that around.
I heard an interview recently. It was you, and it was so quotable, and it's just been stuck in my mind since I heard it a couple of days ago. And you said, someone asked you, like, when do you know to apply the 80-20 rule? And you go, if I don't want to go that way, it's probably there. And I just love that. That was it's just so poignant. People don't think of it that way. They like try to go the easy route, and they wonder why they're not getting what they want.
Well, 80-20 it's kind of like martial arts. You know, there's a yellow belt version and a brown belt version and a black belt version. And then there's 2nd degree black belt and 4th degree black belt and 9th degree black belt. And at every stage, and so in other words, there's a lot of stages of how good you are with 80-20. And every stage is counterintuitive. And every stage is what most people would not do. And so it becomes very Zen-like. And I'm not going to get into a bunch of crazy abstractions. I'm just saying that those different levels, they all defy common sense.
Yeah. And you've had a very practical. Oh, good.
So I want to come to that for a minute, Perry, because as we're doing the show here and people are watching and listening, there may be people in who are leaders in whatever it is they're a leader in. And we've all been bombarded with the, claim your niche thing and therefore be the expert in that niche. It's interesting that all three of us on this episode have all jumped ship several times. From being, I'm supposed to be this, but actually, and for me, it's not, when I look at it in myself, I don't see it as I wasn't that. I just see that was an aspect of me, and now I'm this aspect, and it's, human beings are multifaceted. That's how I see it. Yeah. But in the marketing world, because that's the world you came from, in the marketing world of own your niche, claim your niche, and you're the only one in that niche, how do you address that with somebody who's watching, listening to us, who's saying, well, listen, I've built all of this. First of all, I've got all this investment in this niche, into this identity in the niche, and I've got all this following in the niche. And now I'm jumping from Google AdWords to Evolution 2.0. That's about as far from it as it could possibly, this guy is whatever he's smoking, give me two, because it's big stuff. Right. So how would you say that to somebody who is maybe in that self? Because I think oftentimes, I've talked about this, oftentimes there's what I call a business identity crisis, right? It's an identity crisis. It's like, well, if I'm not that, who am I? So how do you get them to jump off the cliff, or how would you guide them to jump off the cliff and understand that they are going to grow wings?
Funny thing, I just had breakfast this morning with a guy who used to be in charge of $1 billion budget in advertising at Anheuser-Busch. Like, he was the guy that was putting the Clydesdales on the TV screens, literally. And he, I think he left Anheuser-Busch maybe 10 years ago. And then he was running things at a pet company, and then he moved to Chicago. He pulled up stakes, and he's 57. And I was talking to him about, I said, wow, moving to Chicago at like age 55 after you had this huge career in St. Louis, like that's like a big change. And he said, well, it would have been really easy to just stay there in St. Louis, and I know everybody, But he said, you know, here's the thing though. He said, you know, all my old friends, you know, some of them are like moving away to other places, and some of them are, you know, pursuing new directions in their life, and some of them are getting sick and old. And he goes, if I stayed in St. Louis, it would be an illusion to think that everything was going to stay the same, because things change. And I said, you know what? I'm going to move to Chicago. I'm going to reinvent myself. And he said, it's great. And he was telling me about all these things that he's involved in. And I said, well, you know, the nice part is it's not like you lost your relationships with the old people, not the good ones. Like there's a bunch of weak ones that went on the wayside, but
Sure.
but like the good ones. See, this is kind of how I view it. Like, okay, I was an industrial marketing guy 20 years ago, and I still have a couple of connections in that world. And you know, and then, you know, then there's Google AdWords, and there's some Facebook stuff, and there's 80/20, and there's advanced 80/20 stuff, and then Evolution 2.0. And the thing is that all of those things run on a common set of principles. You know, if anybody actually wanted to listen to it, I could do an easy 2-day marketing seminar, and I could connect the dots of how evolutionary principles and business and marketing are nearly identical. Okay, like on the surface they appear to be completely different things. Under the hood they're actually the same thing. And one of the things that I think is inherent in a good career transition or a good evolution is that the outside of the vehicle might have changed, you know, from a Honda Civic to an SUV, but the engine is actually still the same. I think, and I think, well, Dov or Joel, either one of you, I mean, do you agree with that? Do you see that pattern in your evolutions?
Well, you know, you and I had talked about that on Curiosity Bites, is that there is certain central pieces that just don't change. You know, as I always, my language is that your passion is the vehicle, but your purpose is what the vehicle transports, and the purpose doesn't change. The passion can change. So I don't disagree with it, but the anxiety I'm talking about is what people are go through, right? It's like, how do I give this up? I've just built that, you know, and I've done it. Joel's done it. You've done it. We've all done it. Let's just dive a little bit deeper into the 80/20, because I talked about the Mandelbrot fractal set of 80/20. And if you don't know what a Mandelbrot set is, I really encourage you to go onto YouTube and put in, spell it any way you want, they'll correct it, Mandelbrot set. And then when you do, you'll see this beautiful, magnificent fractal image that just you keep falling deeper and deeper into it. And in our conversation, we touched on, in Curiosity Bites, we touched on how 80/20 is a Mandelbrot set, in that you just keep falling deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Talk to us about the context of that. Put that in the context, rather, of leadership. How do you see it applying to leadership, Perry? Because I think this was a great opening for that.
So the epiphany that I had in the coffee shop was Richard made this almost throwaway comment, which he never returned to in the rest of the book. He said, well, 80/20 has a lot to do with chaos theory. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I had read a couple of books about that. Like if you just go to YouTube and you type fractals and like hit return, almost everything you see will be this thing called the Mandelbrot set. And what it is a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern. Now, there's this saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And I think that's very true of human beings. You know, the way that you build a table with drills and saw in your garage is kind of like the same way that you do a spreadsheet in your business, or kind of the same way you go out on a date with your wife. There's like these commonalities. And what I realized was that 80/20 was this pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern inside a pattern that describes everything in the whole universe. So, for example, it describes the income of 8 billion people in the world, that 20% of the 8 billion people make 80% of the money, and the other 80% get 20%. Well, you can zoom, 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 zoom down to the 10 richest people in the world with Bezos and all those guys. And you know what? 80-20 is still true down to the top 10 richest people in the world. Well, this dramatically simplifies everything, okay? Because it says that there's going to be leading groups of people, and there's going to be following groups of people at every level and at every scale, and that in a certain manner of speaking, it's no different. And that's the most powerful thing that you can have, when you can realize that there is a common principle that unites all cause and effect. And it's true whether we're talking the size of craters on the moon, or we're talking about support tickets on your website, or if we're talking about problem employees or problem customers or referral sources. And so one of the best things that any leader can do is walk into the room and go, what's the 80-20? And you go, well, the 80-20 of what? And it's like, you name it. What's the 80-20 of income? What's the 80-20 of influence? What's the 80-20 of who owns the most real estate? What's the 80-20 about who owns the domain names? Well, it's going to be different people. But the funny thing is that it's like the math of all those things is identical all the way across the board. So this was one of the most simplifying insights that I ever had in my entire life, that there's an 80-20 inside every 80-20. It's not just the 20% and the 80%, but guess what? 20% of the 20% earn 80% of the 80%. And 20 of the 20 of the 20 earn 80% of the 80% of the 80. So that means, for example, 1% of the things you do influence 50% of the outcomes. Well, that has a very practical application, especially in the 21st century, because I think that 20, 30 years ago, the secret to a successful career was, I got my list of 30 things and I'm going to check them off as fast as I can, and I'm going to be like super productive. You know what? That doesn't work anymore. That will earn you $50 an hour. That will make you $100,000 a year if you're good at just checking boxes off.
Yeah.
Right.
But $100,000 a year in the 21st century, that's not a leader. A leader is somebody who says, what one thing, if I checked that off today, would justify me skipping the other 19 or 29 on the list, and I could take the day off. Yeah. That's what a real leader does, because 95% of what you do doesn't move the needle. It doesn't strategically change things. It only tactically, it only moves you inches. It doesn't move you miles. And the people that are changing the world, the Jeff Bezos or you know, the guy that founded Uber, or you know, people like that, those are the people that think the way that I'm describing.
So just, yeah. I just want to give this, I want you to repeat something you just said, and I'm going to hand it over to Joel, because I think I want people to get it, and I don't want it to be what Richard did with you with chaos theory, which is this, you guided us to sit down with the list of 20 things, and you said, you got a very specific instruction. I don't want to repeat it because I want you to say it. What did you actually say there? Because I want leaders listening to go, if there's one thing I'm going to walk away with, that's it. What was it?
Okay. So if you have a list of 20 things, I guarantee you that 80-20 applies to them, 80-20 squared, 80-20 cubed. In fact, it might not even be as generous as 80-20. It might be 90-10 or 95-5. Let's go with 90-10. That's probably about realistic. 10% of the things on that list will produce 90% of the results in the world. And the other 90% of the things on that list will only produce 10%. Okay, so 10% of 20 things, that's 2 things. 2 things on your list of 20 are going to achieve 90% of what would happen if you did all of them. And you can't do all of them. So which ones are they? So which one thing on today's list would move the needle so much that I could skip the other 19 and take the day off if I just checked off that one thing? Now, back to what Joel was saying 10 minutes ago, that is probably the thing that scares you the most.
Yes.
It is probably the thing where what your lizard brain will do is, well, you know, this one makes me anxious. If I do these other 19 things, it will calm my anxiety down and I will feel busy. And the number one thing still won't get done. And you'll get to the end of the day and you go, man, like I ran around with my chicken head cut off and it was crazy. And I don't feel like I accomplished anything. And I'm frustrated and I feel meaningless. And I feel like, oh, I think I feel like watching Breaking Bad where like a good guy turns into a criminal because life is hopeless and meaningless. And like, this is how most people live their life. No, I think I'm going to read Black. Yeah, I'm going to Black Mirror. I'm going to watch that tonight.
But I love what you just said there, because that one thing, and I'm a big advocate of this, that one thing is the thing that scares the crap out of you. It's the thing you don't want to do. It's the word you don't want to use. It's the thing you're driving that calls you. It's what I call your soul's calling. When your head's calling is much easier and is going to get far more applause, but you're going to die a miserable death in the process.
Two of my mentors, like big mentors in my life, told me they thought Evolution 2.0 was crazy. Like, why are you doing this? Like, this makes no sense. Like, this is not going to help you be a billionaire. Now, actually, I think they're wrong. But, you know, sometimes you have to decide that your mentors are wrong about certain things, you know? Yes. And sometimes a mentor will carry you many, many miles on a certain road, but it's like, you know what? I need to get off this bus. I need to get on another bus. It might not even be you got to get off the old bus. You might still be able to ride that bus to certain locations, right? I think there are certain problems in the world that have our name on it. It's like, how did I end up doing this? Because your name was on that, buddy. Like, only you can do that. Like, you ever have things where you're like, everybody else in the whole world is screwing this up. Like, I don't know why they can't see it. They have their heads shoved up some dark corner somewhere, but like, I got to do this the right way. Like, if I don't do this right, nobody will, and the world will suffer for it. So here I go.
Yeah, but you're a Google AdWords guy. I mean, come on. Your name's got Evolution 2.0. I don't think so.
You know what I need to do, and you need to do, and everybody listening, you need to do the most meaningful thing that you can do. Okay. Yeah. Not the thing that sounds best on your CV. Okay? Like, how many bureaucrats and miserable people, like, they drive to work in a metal coffin every single day, right? On some smog-choked expressway. One of my favorite lines in the whole world from any song is from Synchronicity by the Police. The secretaries pout and preen like cheap tarts on a red light street, and all he ever thinks to do is watch. And every single meeting with his so-called superior is a humiliating kick in the crotch. Well, that's like most people's lives right there. Like,
Gordon Sumner, my friend. Gordon Sumner. There's the guy.
That's awesome.
Joel, you had something to jump in with.
Yeah, there's just, so in a lot of the work that I do with C-Suite, there seems to be this the fact that they answer to someone, unlike entrepreneurs where we get to kind of just set our design and say we're going that way, and really we're answering to the marketplace. I get this thing where they get these great ideas, such as like the 80-20, and then they go back and go, okay, even if you're the CEO, I have to explain to the board of directors, I'm going to take my list of 20 and I'm going to make it 2. And so how would you advise them to really make that? I mean, we know it'll work eventually, but sometimes those changes a little bit more resistance in larger companies. But how do you get it in there? How do you make it happen?
Well, here's how here's how I talk to my customers and clients. I always say, listen, true or false, 80-20 is a law of nature. And they go, well, true, especially if they've read my book. Like, oh my goodness, yes, it's true. It's like, okay, so it is guaranteed, we can absolutely guarantee that if you do 20 things, 2 of them are going to get 90% of the effort, right? And they're like, yes. Okay, well, this isn't always a given, but if you know, if you can rule out most of them as, well, that's not going to do 90% of 5 years from now, that's not going to be 90% of what everybody's talking about. Most, probably at least 15 of those things you can you cross off, right? And there's probably only 5 left. And then the 5 that are left, it may be very speculative. You know, one of them may be complete bust. But you narrow it down to 5 things, and you're like, people, there's only 5 things that are even worth considering here, and we shouldn't even be talking about the other 15. I don't know if I can get them down to 2, but I know I can get them down to 5. Like, just with basic common sense. Like, most people are trying to do way too many things. And it's just, it's killing us. Like, how many Facebook friends do you really need? You got 483. Do you need 515? Like, really?
Yeah,
like,
I love
when
that
80% of your joy is going to come from like 5 people in your life.
Yeah, I love that edging, even their, like, you're applying the 80-20 to even their, like, making it a part of their organization. How many changes can you make that's going to have the 80-20 effect there as well? So even if you can't get down to 2, maybe you can get down to 5, and the results from those will allow you to carry out to go, hey, we got to get even tighter than this. And so just, again, you're playing that infinite loop inside of what's going on.
But the objection is exactly what you were just saying, Perry, is that, okay, then which 2, right? And now we've got 6 people in a room. You know, one of the things they might agree on, and the other one, there's 6 different opinions about. So, you know, again, as you said, part of it is speculative because we don't really know. I mean, you know, all 3 of us here are old enough to remember when people were talking about Web 2.0. You remember that? I remember that clearly. I was having a conversation with somebody on the weekend about this. Web 2.0. They're like, what are you talking about, Web 2.0? I go, it was before the internet was in any way interactive. It was these flat-coded pages. There was no interaction. There was nothing. There became a form where you could put your name, and people were like, wow. You know? Right. And so who would have known what the 80-20 was back then? How do you choose those 2 things? So this speculative piece, how do we address that, Barry? What's your guidance on that?
Okay, so this is where understanding 80-20 really helps. Is the thing. So let's talk about why 80-20 actually works. Okay, so here's an illustration. I got 2 14-year-old kids, and they both tried Jack Daniels on the same day. And one of them likes it, and one of them likes it. Okay? 30 years later, one of them has a drink a week, and the other one has a drink every morning before 9 a.m. And he's an alcoholic, right? Yep. He pours it in his cereal. Okay, so what's the difference? Here's the difference. This is a perfect illustration of 80-20, because 80-20 runs on positive feedback loops. Okay, I liked it, so I go back some more, and I try again, and then I like it, and I get some more, and I like it a little more, and I buy a little more, and I like it a little more, and that loop just goes round and round for 30 years, and you have an alcoholic. Okay? It's the same way we got a Grand Canyon. All it takes is water. See, if water flows through a desert and it makes a path, the next water is going to flow in the same path, and it's going to dig it deeper. And a million years later, you got the Rio Grande. Okay, that's how 80-20 works. Okay, positive feedback loop. So the question that you ask is, we got 5 things we're going to do. Which ones of these have positive feedback loops that will self-reinforce? Okay, so Web 2.0, right? We're rewinding before we knew what social media is, and you go, well, if the web becomes interactive, then what is that? Well, that's a feedback loop. If me, you, and Joel are all on Facebook, and I write something and Dove likes it and Joel likes it, and then Dove comments, and then Joel comments on Dove's comment and Dove comments on Joel's comment, that is a positive feedback loop. And if you can look in advance and say, well, you know, this one has like 3 little positive feedback loops, and this other thing has 12 positive feedback loops, the one with 12 is almost certain to win. Okay, and this, I mean, this is the thinking that I apply now when I'm working with real clients who are. So let me give you an example of this. So I had this guy, he came to essentially a Google Ads workshop in probably 2011. And this guy was doing online small business loans. And he was just trying to figure out Google Ads, okay? Well, we worked together on and off. Every couple years, he would circle back and we worked together. And in 2014, he came to the seminar I did with Richard Koch, and he got it fixed in his mind. He said, I need to proposition simplify small business loans, which means getting a small business loan needs to be a super, super fast feedback loop, and it takes too long. Okay, so in 2014, 2015, getting a small business loan on the internet took anywhere from 3 to 30 hours. Okay, like, well, we got to do a credit check and somebody's going to call you back. It needs to go. We have to figure out how to make this like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. Like you're going to get the email, or maybe it's even short enough you can sit there and wait for the screen like dip, 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 dip. Okay, 60 seconds goes by and here's your answer. He did that. And that was called Loan Builder, and PayPal bought it for an obscene amount of money 2 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, and now when you log into PayPal, like they're like, would you like a PayPal loan? That's Loan Builder. He built that thing, okay?
Amazing.
And the conversation that we had about that was, we looked at all the different feedback loop. It's like, so if you can make this faster and this faster and this faster. So if I could abuse an analogy a little bit, it enables the 14-year-old to become an alcoholic in 12 months instead of 30 years.
Don't wait.
It's like drink Jack Daniels, get sloshed, then do it again, and then, and then 5 minutes went by. I mean, I'm being really super facetious here, but that is how you judge among your 5 things. And of course, you look at the other 15 that we swept off the table. There wasn't even going to be a feedback loop. It's like if you improve that thing, nobody was going to notice, or like only 3 people would ever see it, right? And so this gets you to the infinite things you could obsess about and be a perfectionist about that don't get you anywhere, versus, you know what, obsessively, perfectionistically getting Loan Builder right so that you can get like, well, I want to borrow $40,000 because payroll is coming up in 3 days and I got approved in 30 seconds. So now I'm on with my business. See,
the challenge
that
there
is what.
Isn't the challenge there confirmation bias, meaning that, I think
Yeah.
this is going to be the one that's going to create the feedback loop. I think this is the one that's going to get the most attention. I think, so there's that confirmation bias. and therefore I'm not paying enough attention to other stuff, and I'm going to keep plowing energy into the thing until I create a feedback loop.
Okay, so this is where, so all projects are at that stage for a while. It's just you, and only you believe in it. So the way that you get past that, like over that hump, is this. You have to prototype your feedback loop on real people. Okay, so let me give you a really like simple rudimentary example of this. I call it poor man's peer review. So let's say you're writing a book, or it doesn't have to be a book. It could be a white paper. It could be a tutorial video of some kind, but something you're going to put out there. And once it's out there, like, it needs to be good. Think about books. Most books have not been read by more than 6 or 8 people before the day they're published,
including the author.
Including the author, like the editor, the author's wife, the author's best friend. That's like all the people that read it. So what I do is we go in Upwork or Fiverr, and we offer people like $25 to $50 to read a book. And we will ask them, okay, what is your 2 favorite chapters, 2 least favorite chapters? Did you get stuck? Did you get bored? Would you buy this for $12.95? Would you recommend this to a friend? Tell me about it. And I'll literally pay people $50 to read a book. By the time you have paid 10 people $50 to read your book, you know whether you have a good book or not. Okay, now that is an exact answer to your question, Dove. It's like the simplest, like, do you like this 10-minute YouTube video? You could probably go on Fiverr and get somebody to watch it for $5, right? But can you get 10 people who are in your market? Now remember, on Fiverr, you can find people in any market you can imagine, right? People who are into fishing, people into leadership books, like whatever. Can you get 10 people to watch your 10-minute video and actually give you feedback? So, like, this is where anytime a company or a project or an idea can get fixed by real feedback from real human beings before it has to survive the cold, hard light of the marketplace, you need to do it. And see, your early prototype will kill the projects that, Dove, you're referring to that deserve to get killed, even though you believe in it. Because trust me, I've believed in a lot of things that were fantasies. I mean, I still fail all the time. Trust me. I am in the trenches every day getting kicked in the head. I mean, believe me, but that's how you get out of the prototype stage fast.
Well, that reminds me of a lot of stuff you teach. I mean, in that everything is everything, back to the old AdWords days, that's literally what you were telling us to do. I got through the first like module of that program and crushed the competition. I didn't have to finish the entire program. I crushed the competition, and it was that willingness to get out there and test. And so what you're saying is even test if your ideas are worth doing as fast as you can. If you can speed up even the loop of denying the paths, then you can move on to the ones that actually get it. And so many people, they logically get this. They know that together and try it, but they don't. What is that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because when I started teaching Google AdWords, I looked at that. It was like, okay, this is the coolest thing I have ever seen. This is the coolest thing in the history of marketing. I loved it. I fell in love with it. But I did not look at Google Ads as first and foremost a way to get traffic. I looked at it as a way to test ideas and to test every part of the idea. Is it the right headline? Is it the right landing page? Is it the right product? Is it the right guarantee? Is it the right USP? Are we even in the right market, right? Like, go in there, test 10 different ads and 3 different landing pages, test 2 or 3 products if you want to, and then don't assume you've got anything right.
Yeah.
until all of those tests tell you that you're right. Let the marketplace tell you that you're right.
And we are in a marketplace that does that for us. You want to test a quick product or see if you have real coaching service, put it out there. You know, even if you kill it as fast as you can because it does not do anything, at least you're moving forward. But yeah, the market, almost everything is now like AdWords used to be. Like, so it was the first mechanism for that. Yeah.
When you're in that room full of 6 people, biggest thing you got to remember is they've all got head trash too. They've all got a demon on their left shoulder too. And they are probably more terrified than you of failing. And a lot of times they will, what they want to do, they want to go do these 17 other things because it will push the brutal, gritty reality. It will kick the can even further down the road, and the day of reckoning is further off, and then they can go back into their cubicle and just do what they're used to doing. And this is most of the time when you're in a meeting, this is what you're fighting when you are bringing a really disruptive idea to the table.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. We've been going for a while, and I haven't even gotten to the stuff I wanted to talk to you about regarding not thinking in averages and the bleeding neck. So which one of those do you want to pick up on, Perry? Where do you want to jump?
Well, let's talk about bleeding necks. I think this is one of the most useful concepts. So have you ever gone to the hospital? Like, you go to the ER and you got like a broken arm, right? And it's the end of the world. Like, look, my arm's flapping around. And the receptionist like doesn't even look up, and she like shoves a clipboard at you and says, fill this thing out and someone will see you, go sit up. And so you're sitting there with the Good Housekeeping magazines filling in your clipboard and stuff. Your arm is all screwed up. And like, you thought you had an emergency and they don't think you're having an emergency. Then some guy with a gunshot wound with his aorta is squirting blood on the ceiling, he comes in there, and like all of a sudden, like medical professionals from invisible places pop out of nowhere and they whisk him into the ER, right? And they patch him up. It's like, wow, I guess they have a different idea of an emergency than I do. Well, so this is a perfect illustration of what John Paul Mendoza calls the 5 power disqualifiers. And these 5 things, this is a brilliant list of things. These 5 things are always true every time somebody buys anything. Okay? You can just eliminate all kinds of stuff that you coulda, woulda, shoulda been selling. Not really, right? So number 1, do they have a bleeding neck? Okay. People with bleeding necks are willing to spend money. Okay? Like, you could tell your husband for 20 years to stop eating cheeseburgers, and he needs to exercise, and he needs to lose weight, and he'll ignore you, and he won't even buy vitamins. Okay? But when he's on the floor having a cardiac arrest, he'll spend any amount of money to make the terror go away, okay? Because he's got a bleeding neck, okay? Now, there's 4 other things on that list. Number 2, they have the money. Now, it took me, you guys, it must have taken me about 3 years as a sales guy to figure out, if they don't have the money, they're not buying the stuff. I mean, I thought, well, if I sing Kumbaya with them, no, if mama and papa don't have the money, or if the department doesn't have the budget, okay, leave, because they're not, like, just leave, right? Okay, number 3, they buy into your unique selling proposition, not the other guy's unique. Like, they buy into your way of solving the problem. Number 4, this is a big one. They have the ability to say yes. Okay, now this is a leadership thing, not just a
Yeah.
purchasing thing, right? Like if if you're talking to a guy about a kitchen remodel and the wife ain't there, okay, he has the ability to say no, he can stop you, but he cannot give you a yes. Like if the wife isn't there, you're not remodeling the kitchen, right? And number 5, it fits their overall plans. Now, if you take bleeding neck, money, USP, ability to say yes, and fits their overall plans, you have a criteria for anybody buying anything. And it also points you to, okay, so what is the bleeding neck? Because 80/20 tells you that 1% of your features or capabilities is 50% of why people buy from you. And you know what it is? It's the bleeding neck. You know, you've got the software and it does 900,000 things, but it's the one feature that, you know, like maybe, you know, if they use this software, it's going to catch a customer that's going to lose you $100,000 a year, and it's going to flag them, and then you cannot sell them something. Okay, then now you got the reason why they're going to buy the software. You go straight to the CEO and you go straight to the CFO and you go, I'm going to save you those nightmare customers that cost you all this money. Here, buy this software. And they'll go, all right, we approve. You guys work out all the details. We're going to go play golf.
Now, that doesn't only work for buying things, it's buying into things as well. So getting your ideas through, if you look at the same principles, they apply. When someone thinks his job's on the line, they step up and will perform in a way they wouldn't have on your team previously.
That's right. And so 80/20, it applies to everything. It is universal. It is literally outside your window right now. I mean, I can look outside my window and name 10 things where 80/20 is silently doing its work all the time. And if you suddenly become aware of it, you can consult in any company, you can make any system better, you can make any process better, you can make any advertising better, you can make leadership decisions better. It's the most powerful tool.
Well, what I like about it, as I said, you know, it's a full loop to where we started, which is this fractal context of it, that, you know, that it's this Mandelbrot set of strategy really is what it is, in that you apply 80/20 to this, and whatever result you get, you apply 80/20 to that. And whatever result you get from that, you apply 80/20 to that. And you actually right there could keep going forever if that's what you choose to do. But it is this, what I liked about it and the way that you explained it to me was that it's a refining of the refining of the refining of the refining, which you and I, you know, and Joel and I have talked about this privately, separately, which is how we live our lives. You know, when I say we, I'm talking about us three, in that we're always looking for the deeper meaning, the deeper understanding, the deeper meaning, the deeper understanding. And as I said, exploring those big T truths and discovering that they're actually small T truths, and well, what's underneath that? Because maybe there's a big T truth underneath that. And we keep digging and digging and digging. And in fairness to leaders watching us, they might think, well, that's crazy. I don't want to do that. You're absolutely right. That's fantastic. You should probably stop at 1 or 2 levels. That's fantastic. That is the shit that drives me. It's the stuff that gets me out of bed in the morning, because it's like, there's got to be more. There's got to be a deeper understanding of this. And that drive for, you know, Tony Robbins said he's driven to make things better. I understand that and I respect that. For me, I'm driven to understand things at a deeper level. And then look at how that deeper level of understanding can make things better. So I don't want to make things better for the sake of making things better. I want to understand why we're doing it this way and what's the meaning of that for me, you, or us.
People who are looking for the capital T truths, in my experience, they are much more successful over a period of 5 or 10 years. They are not necessarily more successful in the next 3 months, but over long periods of time, I find that to be true. And they are certainly the most interesting people to have a conversation with. And what I love about the world that has grown around me as I've been doing all these things is that the people we attract by pursuing the large T truths are some of the most quality people, and they're level-headed, and they're not susceptible to all of these fads and trends that just kind of go away, and they build lasting businesses, and they sell companies to PayPal for untold quantities of money, and and then they're on to the next interesting thing. And so I really enjoy those kind of people. And I think, look, those of you who are listening, if you resonate, you know who you are.
Yeah, and you said something there that I think is really important, is that we live in a world that is talking about instant gratification, and we see the internet marketing guy who is leaning on a car, with a girl leaning on it next to him with her boobs hanging out, and they're getting onto a private jet, and there's 6 chicks with boobs hanging out while he's talking. I mean, for those of us who are old enough to remember Tom Vu from the 90s, do you remember Tom Vu?
Yeah.
Do you remember Tom Vu, Barry?
Just a little.
Vu, he was a Vietnamese immigrant who was into real estate. You remember him now?
Yes, now I do.
Right, and this is totally racist. I can't do this, but I'm going to do it because I'm me. Which is, you buy my plan, you're stupid if you don't. He was just like harsh accent, and it would be all these chicks with their boobs hanging out, and it'd be on his boat, and it was like, oh my God, it was so cheesy, but it was very appealing to the 20-year-old, to the 25-year-old, and I see that more than ever now. Now there's not one Tom Vu, there's multiples of. And as you said, they're not looking for a deeper truth. They're looking for a fatter checkbook. And that's fine. That's okay. But there comes a point for leaders, whether you're a leader in any capacity, where you will find yourself going, what's the frickin' point? And I think that is the evolution of human beings, is that we get to a place of what's the frickin' point? And for some people, they go, I can't look at that. That's too much. And I'm just going to pull that blanket over my head, and I'm going to buy another car. I'm going to buy another house. I'm going to buy another Rolex. I'm going to buy my wife a new set of boobs. I'm going to buy myself a penis extension, whatever it is. Right? Yes, welcome to this show.
Welcome to Full Monty.
Welcome to Full Monty. But they're not going to go there, and that's fine. There's no judgment on them. It's fine. But for those of us who feel that, I think that we've actually got to claim the courage to get over that hump of feeling like we're wrong for wanting to look deeper.
Well, I'll go further than you. Okay. So I do have a judgment about those people because so when you see the ad, so the guy, he's got his shoe up on the bumper of the Rolls Royce, and he's got his arm like this, and you can see his Rolex. And no, you know what that ad means? The translated meaning of that ad is, hey, you broke, pathetic loser who scraped 59 cents out of your car seats to buy Taco Bell yesterday. You need to go borrow more money and give it to me. That's what that means. And, I mean, I guess those people do have a place in the world. I mean, Wolverines do need to eat meat somewhere. And I guess it does like weed out like the losers and make room for the real people. But I feel like it's my job to say, hey, you don't listen to that guy. Like, that guy's not telling you any principles, and there is no depth to what he's saying. And that's like how not to even give him the time of day, because the people that are teaching the principles and the people that you do need to listen to, they're talking at a quieter tone of voice to a more intently listening group of students. And they're usually not like the guys with the billboards everywhere. And so, wisdom does not usually just come up and conk you on the head and, shake you by the lapels. Wisdom is kind of whispers to you.
Or it throws you off a mountain.
Or it throws, she can throw you off a mountain.
In some cases. But you have to be really thick for that to happen.
Well, you know anything like that, Dov?
I have read about someone somewhere. I think it's on
somebody. Yeah, I've heard that story somewhere.
A guy with long hair or something. I don't know, some hippie. Joel, do you have a final question you want to ask Perry before I hand it off?
No, I just want to say this has been incredible. And I hope that people see like what you're pointing out there is just like the show isn't the depth. And it doesn't mean that they have something that you necessarily want. What's behind it may be nothing. They may be the next wreckage of people who once had success and don't now. And if we can look deeper, yeah, like there's so much there. And I thank you for sharing that and always staying as one of the voices of keeping that alive. You as well, Dov. So this has been an amazing, just a fun chat, you know.
Great to have you on with us, Joel. Thank you. Perry, before we finish up and before you tell everybody where they can tap into all your wonderful resources, give our audience that punch in the nose 1 minute practicality thing that you would have them go away and like, go do this so they actually get it. Because, you know, you and I both know that information is worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. So what is the application moment?
I think the application moment is tomorrow morning when you get up. The worst way to start your day in the whole world. Pull this device into your bed and start reacting to stuff. Okay, that is the worst way to start your day. Here's the best way to start your day. Get yourself a pen and a notebook and like crush your ADD for 20 minutes. Okay, pray, meditate, like write down a dream you had, like whatever. Get yourself into a thinking space and figure out, okay, well, these 20 things that I've got today, what are the 2 that are actually going to move the needle more than the other 18 put together? And just figure that out before you start. Your day will go so much better and you'll have space. People need space more than ever now. Okay, we're beginning the 3rd decade of the 21st century now. You need space to think. You need to start your morning. I started my morning by thinking and having space before I did anything else.
Do you do that, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so do I. That's and it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's exactly what you were saying, Perry, is that everybody I know who is looking for a deeper level of truth, everyone I know who is a seeker, everyone I know who is a leader at the level of not just business, but in life, does exactly that. Yeah, I've got my devices and I'm on a million of them and I'm on all these different platforms, but that time for me to be with myself, to be with my heart, my soul, and my mind before anything else, can't live without it. Yeah. And sometimes the world is screaming. So I think it's a great piece of input. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful piece of advice. Perry, this has been awesome, of course, and I know it would be. Please tell our audience, our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, the projects you're working on, and all the wonderful resources that you've got, because there is lots.
If you go to sell8020.com, we've got a page. You can buy 80/20 sales and marketing for $7 in the US, 14 international, which is about $10 less than on Amazon. Plus you get some extra goodies to go along with it that you don't get normally. So you just go to sell8020.com. 80/20 sales and marketing will change the way you see everything. You won't even see the same thing when you look out the window anymore. And you'll run your business differently and you'll embody 80/20.
Well, that was fabulous. Thank you, sir. Well, it was a pleasure and honor. Thank you for being with us. And thank you, Joel, for being here too. And this was a fun conversation. And of course it was amazing and lots of learning on it. And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going and looking into our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, and you just find them under the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. And if you're ready to develop the leadership and loyalties inside of your organization, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com. Find out how you can hire me, Dov Barron, as a speaker or strategist for your organization. come to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking, where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how you can apply the 80-20 rule before you even get out of bed. I'm Delv Bear, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.